Something is happening at Manchester United, and for once, this doesn't feel like random transfer gossip designed to dominate social media for 24 hours. This feels real. Concrete talks, personal terms, multiple reliable journalists all pointing in the same direction. And if the reports are accurate, Manchester United may have already identified the midfield rebuild that defines the Michael Carrick era. 3 names: Ederson, Tchouaméni and Fernandez from West Ham. 1 value signing, 1 Premier League opportunity and 1 world-class statement signing. This is the Redbreak. Before we dive into the transfers themselves, let's talk about why this summer matters so much, because context changes everything. Manchester United just finished 3rd in the Premier League with 71 points under Michael Carrick. And honestly, nobody expected that. When Carrick stepped in permanently, most fans were cautious. Some were outright doubtful. But quietly, steadily, he stabilised a club that looked completely lost earlier in the season. 3rd place doesn't make United title challengers overnight, but it does buy Carrick credibility. And now comes the most important part of the project: the rebuild. Because next season is judgment season. Not just for Carrick, not just for the players, for the entire football structure. Can Manchester United actually build a midfield capable of competing with the best teams in Europe again? Or are we about to watch another summer filled with compromises and panic decisions? Let's start with the name that's suddenly become very real: Ederson. And yes, the midfielder from Atalanta, not the goalkeeper. According to Fabrizio Romano, Manchester United have already agreed personal terms with Ederson. That's important, because we're not talking about vague interest anymore. We're talking about direct conversations, face-to-face talks, and a player who reportedly wants the move to Old Trafford. Simon Stone from the BBC has also confirmed United's concrete interest. And when Simon Stone says a deal is not being ruled out, that usually means Manchester United themselves are leaving the door open. That's how football journalism works. If United wanted this story shut down, they'd shut it down quickly. They haven't. Now here's where the debate starts. The reported fee is around £35 million. Ederson is 26. He turns 27 in July. And he only has 1 year left on his contract. On paper, 35 million doesn't sound outrageous in today's market. But let's be honest here, this is still a gamble. He's never played in the Premier League. He's not a regular Brazil international. And adapting to English football is not automatic. We've seen talented midfielders arrive in England and completely struggle with the speed, physicality and pressure. But here's why I still understand the logic behind the deal. Not every signing in your rebuild can cost £80 million. You need balance. And if Ederson becomes the value signing in a 3-man midfield rebuild, then suddenly the transfer makes more sense. Another midfielder who looks decent in Europe but gets exposed in the Premier League. And nobody truly knows which outcome we're getting yet. But here's the key point. Ederson alone is not enough. If Manchester United are serious about replacing Casemiro properly, then 1 midfielder in this rebuild has to be elite. And that brings us to the biggest story of the entire window. Tchouaméni, Real Madrid midfielder, France international, Champions League winner, one of the best defensive midfielders in world football. Fabrizio Romano says Tchouaméni is viewed internally at Manchester United as a dream target. And honestly, he should be. This is exactly the calibre of player United should be chasing if they truly want to compete again. But then comes the problem: the salary. Reports suggest the deal is considered extremely difficult because of wages and Madrid's stance. And this is where frustration starts kicking in for a lot of fans, because we've seen this story before. Every time United identify a genuinely elite player, the same obstacle appears: too expensive, too difficult, salary concerns. Meanwhile, the club has spent years paying massive wages to players who never justified them. That's the irony. United became terrified of repeating old mistakes and now risk becoming too cautious to sign world-class players. And replacing Casemiro is not a position where you can afford to be cautious. You don't replace a player of Casemiro's experience and quality with another gamble. You replace him with elite quality, someone proven at the highest level, someone who's played under pressure, someone who can immediately raise the level of the midfield. That's why Tchouaméni matters so much. He's not just another signing, he's the statement signing, the player that tells the rest of Europe Manchester United are serious again. Now, interestingly, Ben Jacobs reports there is already a verbal agreement in place between United and Tchouaméni on personal terms. So, despite Romano describing the deal as difficult, the situation may actually be further advanced than people think. My feeling? The deal is alive. Complicated, expensive, difficult, but alive. And Manchester United now have a huge decision to make. Are they willing to stretch financially for the right player? Because if United walk away from Tchouaméni purely because of wages, that decision could define this rebuild for years. Now let's talk about the third midfielder, Fernandez from West Ham. And this deal suddenly became much more realistic after West Ham's relegation. Whenever a club drops into the Championship, everything changes. Players want to leave, fees become negotiable, selling clubs lose leverage, and Manchester United know that. Reports suggest talks are advancing, and out of all three midfielders, Fernandez may actually be the easiest deal to complete. He's younger, Premier League experienced, energetic, technically strong, and importantly, he fits the profile of a player Carrick seems to want in midfields. Mobile, aggressive, comfortable in possession. Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Imagine this midfield three: Ederson, Fernandez, Tchouaméni. Is it perfect? No, but it's balanced. Ederson gives you energy and physicality. Fernandez gives you mobility and progression. Tchouaméni gives you elite defensive control and experience. Suddenly, United's midfield starts looking modern again. But there are still risks here. Two of those players have never played in the Premier League, and adapting to England is not guaranteed. We've seen brilliant players struggle before. That's why this rebuild is so important. Because if these signings fail, United go backwards again. And here's where the budget conversation becomes critical. Reports suggest United are working with around £150 million for midfield reinforcements. Now break that down. Ederson costs around 35 million, Fernandez maybe 50, that leaves roughly 65 million. The problem? Tchouaméni is not a £65 million player. Real Madrid will want much more. So something has to change. Either United increase the budget, negotiate smarter deals, or sacrifice quality somewhere else. And this is exactly why the Casemiro replacement cannot be the compromise. If you're going to compromise, do it elsewhere, not in the most important midfield role. Because elite teams are built around elite midfielders. Look at Manchester City, look at Arsenal, look at Liverpool in their prime. The midfield controls everything. And for years, United's midfield has lacked balance, athleticism and control. This summer is their opportunity to finally fix that. Michael Carrick deserves credit for what he's done already, but credibility alone won't win titles. The club now has to back him properly, not halfway, not cautiously, properly. Because if Carrick gets handed another incomplete squad, another good enough midfield, then eventually the same cycle repeats itself. Manager blamed, project reset, another rebuild starts again. United cannot keep doing that. And that's why this summer feels different. For the first time in a long time, the club seems to be targeting profiles that actually make sense together. Not random superstar names, not panic buys, a real midfield structure. Ederson looks close, Fernandez looks achievable, and Tchouaméni is the test, the real test. Because signing him would show ambition. Real ambition, the kind of ambition Manchester United used to be famous for. So now the question is simple. Will United be brave enough to finish the job? Will they pay what it takes? Will they break the wage barrier for the right player? Will they finally build a midfield capable of competing at the highest level again? Because if they pull this off, this could become the most important Manchester United transfer window in years. And honestly, For the first time in a very long time, I think there are genuine reasons to be optimistic. Let me know in the comments, would you take Ederson? Can United actually pull off Tchouaméni? And which midfield signing would make you believe in this rebuild? Subscribe to Redbreak for every update throughout the transfer window, because this summer is only just getting started.